Okay, today we're going to be working with the painting tools in Photoshop, and some features of those don't work without a tablet. They're made to have a pressure-sensitive tablet. I got mine here, Wacom tablet. Hopefully you have yours too. It's plugged into a USB port. It's pretty straightforward. Um, and I've made a this size we've been fooling around with 5 by 5 at 300 pixels per inch square file new. Um, and Before we do anything, we should make sure it's working properly. Okay. So like if you just get your paintbrush, assuming you're in, let's see, what workspace am I in here? Essentials. Okay. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down the left side, the regular old paintbrush. Make sure you're not painting with white, right? Um, and if I paint, it does, whoops, pushed on the button. Okay, it does this. It if it's gets skinnier when you let up on it, or fainter, okay, or both, like mine is, then everything's working fine. Okay, but to check it, okay, you have to go, and we're going to look at all this stuff in a minute. But see this thing up here that looks like a folder with a paintbrush on it? That opens the brush palette, okay, and go to Shape Dynamics, right? First of all, make sure it's turned on, okay? If it's not, see, this shows you a preview of the brush, okay? And here's this transfer, and so now I have it with, it doesn't do any of that pressure sensitive stuff. But since we have it, if you don't have a tablet and you're using a mouse, it's going to look like this, okay? So, which you can actually still do quite a lot of work, but we're trying to get the most out of it here. Anyway, so click on Shape Dynamics, not just the checkbox, but on the word. Okay, you have to click on the word to go to the interface over here. So, like for example, if I turn on transfer, it turns it on, but the interface doesn't change here. I got to click on the word transfer to see that change. Okay, so going back to Shape Dynamics. Now, so if you're not seeing it get skinny, make sure that this is not off. See, everybody's on their own computer and stuff, and it should be whatever the default setting is, but I don't know. So I'm just making sure since we're not in the classroom together. If this is off, it's going to be like this, right? So you want to make sure this is set to pen pressure, okay? If you see a little triangle with a yellow triangle, probably with an exclamation point appear right here, that means you don't have any pen pressure input, which either means you're using a mouse or the tablet is having some issue. Normally on a PC, it seems to just, I don't know, we always used to do it in the classroom. We just plug it in and it was pretty transparent. I don't think we had to do anything. Maybe it downloaded some software the first time you used it, and I'm not sure. You may see that it might like download the driver. Should happen automatically, hopefully, in this day and age. But so if you see that thing, but you have a tablet plugged in and you can move it, right? You can move your cursor around. Then what I would recommend you do is unplug it, unplug the cable to the tablet, plug it back in, make sure it's settled down, and then restart Photoshop. Plug it in before you start Photoshop. I just know that sometimes in the classrooms, I never had this problem at home, but sometimes in the classroom, if we would uh, start Photoshop and then plug it in, it wouldn't work. Or sometimes if you start using your mouse, um, and it loses the connection to the tablet, and you might have to unplug it and plug it, or restart Photoshop. Okay, so it's probably better while we're doing this that you don't keep switching from the mouse to the tablet. I know people find that very hard to resist. So what you can do is just stick your mouse away somewhere so you're not grabbing it all the time, because you can do everything with a tablet. It feels a little awkward because it's like I guess a local coordinate system as opposed to an absolute coordinate system. meaning the upper left of the tablet is the upper left of your screen, and the upper right is the up of the tablet is the upper right of the screen. Mine's the middle because I have two screens here, but um, whereas with a mouse, wherever you put it down, it's always in the middle, so it's a little bit weird, but you could just, if you really want to get used to using a tablet, just stick your mouse in a drawer for a week and use the internet or whatever you're doing with just the tablet, and it will become, totally second nature. You can do what you want and more than a mouse with the tablet. I generally use it for just painting computer graphics when I'm doing like 3D CAD stuff and that kind of thing. I always use a mouse. But as soon as you start painting or anything that's like painting, you'll discover, that a mouse really doesn't work. Okay, it's just, even without this pressure sensitive stuff, it just doesn't work right. I don't know. It's just not the right tool. So, and if you're watching this video and you don't have any kind of cursor that you can move with a tablet at all, I don't know, then you're not getting any kind of input. Try a different USB port. The tablets don't really have any moving parts, they don't generally break, although sometimes the pens do, okay? Now, one thing that I always forget to mention, but causes people a lot of problems, is make sure you're using the point down on the pen, because the other end is the eraser, and it will erase. And if you screw around, you can enough with the settings, you can get it so it works. But I'll see people having all kinds of problems, and I come over and they're holding the pen upside down. So the little pointy thing down. So these things do break, but if you don't get any cursor or movement with either end, then it's just not sending a signal, and we'll have to figure out what's going on. Okay. Contact me and we'll go through it one-on-one, I think. Okay, so with all that said, and again, make sure you're not painting in white on a white canvas, obviously. So I got this thing set like this, and let's just look at all the various settings we have here. Just going to stay with the pen tool, right? And we have our foreground and our background color, and you can, use X to switch between. This is just another place where it's really just a quick extra color, okay? To make the brush bigger or smaller, I'm sure I've mentioned this before, but I always use the left or right bracket key on the keyboard, okay? It's on most keyboards, or it should be all the way just to the right of the P key. P as in Paul, okay? And clicking on the right one makes it bigger, and the left one makes it smaller. They never put this in documentation or anything like that because it's just, I don't know, old or something. But I find that it's, the various interfaces and things get in my way more than doing this. And I'm usually, when I'm painting, I'm usually not doing anything with my left hand anyway. So I find this easy to just make things bigger and smaller. But and the other useful keyboard thing when you're painting is a lot of times once you start getting stuff on there, kind of like your palette's already on the screen, you have the colors you need, and you shouldn't have to keep going back there and mixing things or whatever, because you can just push, when you're in the paintbrush, you can push down the Alt key and pick up whatever you want. See, between the red and the blue is sort of this grayish color, or a little bit less gray, perhaps. So the Alt key is a shortcut to the eyedropper, and keep that in your head because that's really useful when you're painting, and you'll use it a lot. Okay. So and we're just painting on the background. So if you get a lot of junk you don't want on there, just go edit fill it with white. Okay. All right. Let's look at the control bar across the top here. Nothing we really need there particularly, but here's a little a shortcut to the size, right? You can also right click if you have a mouse. Let's see, my pen should have the same. You can program in yeah, it's there should be like a little button on sorry, I think I said mouse, on the stylus. Um, it's the same. It opens this interface, which is the same as this. Okay. And it just gives you another place to adjust the size. A lot of people just like right click when they want to make this size bigger or smaller, right click and then adjust it here instead of doing the left to right bracket thing. I use just a regular round brush for a lot of stuff. Some people that do a lot of painting never use them. They always use some kind of shaped brush. It depends, you know, on what you're doing and, you know, and what your style is. And the hardness at the moment is turned all the way down. I can turn it up to get a hard edge brush, okay? Or I can have it somewhere in the middle. I'm going to keep it turned down. And there's a bunch of presets here, which include brushes you recently used at the top and a bunch of other stuff. And honestly, I don't, you know, there's all kinds of, it's just some brush that I made to make some kind of text, spaceship texture or something. But let me put that back. And soft round, I guess, or whoa, that's big. So some of the presets will turn off. See that soft round preset turned off the shape dynamics that I had turned on there. And turn the control to off. Okay, we're back. Okay. Anyway, sorry, got to keep moving here. I don't know if there's any, and you can find tons of free cool brushes on the internet and download them, and you know you have to find the instructions or whatever and install them in here. I appended the old default brushes that used to be on here, like there are these fun stuff like these maple leaves and things like that that have a lot of. So this is just like a single brush looks like the maple leaf, right? Whoa. But there's all these settings we can do in this palette, the brush palette, to make it scatter and things like that. Okay, that was sort of a fun example, is that, but they took it out. To get those, I just went to, where was it? I went here and I think legacy brushes or append default. I think I went to legacy brushes and put the old ones on there because I kind of sometimes they make changes and I've also downloaded some stuff, so I'm not exactly sure how this is different from yours. But at any rate, it's not too important. Mostly, we just want to use the regular round brush. Okay. Anyway, so the brush palette, we'll look at that in a minute. Let me just look at the stuff across the top here first. The blending mode is normal, right? And there's times when we want to change it, but mostly when you're painting, normal is good. We can turn the opacity down and make the whole brush, you know, it'll still get fainter when you lighten up on it, but now the darkest it can be is 51%. I'm going to put that back up. And what do we got here? Some of this stuff is, you have opacity and you have flow, right? So if I turn opacity down to around 50%, for example, and I start painting, if this is one stroke, right? I haven't let up on it. And if I start painting in one area a whole lot, it never gets darker than the 50%. I have to let go of the brush and push down again or again to make it darker, right? But if I turn the opacity back up and turn flow down, okay, these seem kind of similar, but they're a little different, right? Flow, if you run over your own stroke, it gets darker. See, this is getting darker than the 42% I'm at in one stroke. So, and plus it looks slightly different, at least to my eye. So flow and opacity are a little bit different. Forgot what exactly this thing does. Well, not too important. This is an airbrush, which just means that if you put, you know, generally when you're painting, it's not smearing the tip along the path of your hand like a normal, you know, piece of chalk or whatever it is. It's putting down instances of the tip shape. You know, it's like spitting them out real fast so it looks smooth. And when you're in have the flow turned down, right? And if I go along and if I stop, it just stops, right? But if I turn on airbrush and I stop, it keeps putting down instances of the tip shape. So if you're trying to make something that looks like it was sprayed with a spray can or airbrush, that might be useful. But these things here, I really hardly ever use. I mean, I mostly use settings in here a lot, and then maybe turn the opacity down. That's about it. Smoothing, I think, is just what that's talking about is if you move the brush super fast. It used to be if you move your hand really fast, it would like close. If you moved it faster than the software, or maybe it was your display card could keep up with it, it would close across the arc with a straight line, and you could adjust it here. It doesn't, you know, as fast as I can go on my computer, it doesn't have any, doesn't do anything. Let me see here. Oh, here's one thing of interest. This, in the previous version of Photoshop, this was, you had to go into edit, preferences, and something like technology previews. Here's where it was, but I guess they finally decided it's ready for prime time. This is a way to do a mirrored drawing, right? So when you draw on one side, it automatically draws on the other side. It's really bizarre that Photoshop has been running for, we've had Photoshop for 30 years. And other programs like Corel Painter or whatever, you could always do that. And there were certain projects that I would want to do, and I had to write all kinds of like actions in Photoshop to make it flop to one side. Anyway, Photoshop never had that, so it finally does. So that's nice. Let's have a look at it. And since they finally made it, it's pretty good. So like vertical like this, so it just means there's this thing in the middle, and I got to say yes. And I don't think this is a real thing. And when I go out of that mode, it won't be there anymore. But now I can do this, and if I want to make a you know, a face or something like that, I can, whatever. So super fun, right? And, or if I go here to like radial or mandala, let's say with a bunch of segments, check. Woo. It's like an art machine. So that's fun. And then I think when we go symmetry off, the thing goes away, right? And now we're back to drawing regularly. I'm just going to go edit fill, but that's super fun. Okay, so that's looking at the controls across the top. Let's look at this. Now this interface is one of the things that I used to go through here, like in texture and dual brush, and spend a lot of time kind of just pointing at every button, kind of a thing like I did with layer styles, from last semester, if you remember that. But I'm not going to do that here because a lot of these you just don't use very often. The important thing is shape dynamics, transfer, scattering, and that's it. Okay. So let's look at shape dynamics. And also you'll see that once you go through this whole set of them, they're kind of pretty similar. All right. So the way that they lay this stuff out is sometimes a little bit confusing, the way the settings are. So we're set with, let me turn this up a little bit. We're in shape dynamics, and it's being controlled by pen pressure, okay? But the weird thing is they have this indented like this. So when you have size jitter, it looks like the jitter is being controlled by pen pressure, but it's not. The control on pen pressure should be up at the top, and they should just shove jitter, size jitter down, because this has nothing to do with this. Jitter just means random variation, okay, or something like that. And it doesn't have anything to do with this control. The control here is the most important thing. And you have pen pressure, you have off, right, where there's no change in size. And you have fade, okay, which means no matter what you do, the stroke is going to be, in this case, 25 pixels or 25 instances. Not exactly sure. If I make it 200, okay. Okay, every stroke is 200. I think that's instances, not pixels. Okay. And if you don't have a tablet and you're just using a mouse, that might be useful. Okay. Pen pressure is what we want to be in most of the time. Okay, but you don't always want to be making your brushes point in the end. Pen tilt and stylus wheel, I don't think we have any reason to use those, so I'm going to ignore them. You can research them if you want. All right, so that's so let's look at the various settings here. Minimum diameter. If you watch this thing here, it means it won't go all the way to a point, right? When you let up on the pressure, it will get skinnier, but not completely pointy, you know, which might gives you a somewhat more subtle effect, which might be more to your liking. Okay, that's minimum diameter. Size jitter, bounce back up to here. So if I turn this up, it gives me this strangely satisfying line. Okay. Okay, so that's variations in the size of the brush tip. And I'll go back in a minute to brush tip shape. I realize I just skipped over the top part there. Okay, I'll turn that down. Minimum diameter, angle jitter. Okay, so if you look, I'll go up here for a second. You'll see that the brush tip is round at the moment, right? We're doing this with a round brush, right? So if I turn up angle jitter, okay, now I guess I have to start. It's basically rotating the brush tip, the instances of the brush tip. I guess I have to, I think the problem is, oh, it's because I don't have roundness jitter on, but let's go up here and drag this thing like that. So it's so it's not round, okay? And now angle jitter is on and it does this crazy action. A little bit. Okay. This would be really cool with a bevel and embossed layer style on me. If I could make it look like a caterpillar. All right, so that is angle jitter. If I turn it back down, now my brush is skinny because I messed it up here. Let me go back to brush tip shape. Roundness, what do I want, 100% there? Yeah. Okay, back to shape dynamics, angle jitter, and then control. You can make it so the jitter is controlled by pen pressure. So if you're pushing down very light, it doesn't rotate a lot. And if you're pushing down harder, it rotates more. Okay. Oh, and I'll go back here I probably should have done this first, but whatever. I'll make it skinny like that. This angle jitter has some other controls. Like, let's see, if I do pen pressure, so I'm pushing light, and then if I push down hard, it rotates. Pushing down, letting up. Okay, so that's interesting. I have honestly never used this while I was working on some creative or work project, but I'm just showing you, who knows, you might develop a whole art style based on that. But, and I said already that pen tilt and stylus wheel, I don't think we need too much. But this rotation or initial direction or direction are things that you can play with. So rotation, oh, that's not doing anything for me. Not sure exactly what. I have a little exclamation point next to that. Maybe I don't have the right device for that. Initial direction. Yeah, this one, whatever I do, the initial direction influences it, and direction. Yeah, this rotates to match the direction I'm going in, which is kind of interesting. Anyway, I'm putting that back to pen pressure. Yeah, I guess rotation, it must be some other kind of, my Wacom tablet must not supply whatever it's looking for because it has this little exclamation point. All right, back to pen pressure. Okay, I'm going to make that off. Roundness jitter, if I turn, let's see, let's go back here, put this back to 100% round, back to shape dynamics, and roundness jitter. So even if you start with a round one, you can turn that way up, and it's jittering between, between a round brush tip and one that's not round. All right, and you can also control that with pen pressure, etc. You can flip X and flip Y jitter, means whatever shape you have flips back and forth, up and down or left and right. And that doesn't, usually I use that in scattering when that happens, but this won't have any effect now because I'm using a round brush, which looks the same when it's upside down. And brush projection, I don't know what that means. So that appeared there since I last looked, I think. So anyway, that gives us a good idea of the shape dynamics. Mostly, or you just go in here to turn this either to off or pen pressure. It's really 99% of what I go here for. Because there is quite a lot of times when you want, when you're like, if you're just doing like sort of a shading and you don't want this point to happen every time you come to an end of a stroke, often I'll just turn this to off. All right, let's go back and look at brush tip shape. There's another place where you can see all your brush tips, and we will not right in this video, but we'll make some custom brush tip shapes like that maple leaf that I showed you, where you start out with the initial tip shape, and then we apply all these scattering and stuff like that to it, and then save it, so you'll always have those qualities. And we can usually access those here. So here I have them all set just to be just a little icon, not the whole long name. We can adjust the size here again, flip X, flip Y, if it's something that isn't round, that makes sense. And here we can adjust the angle, and you can rotate it here or type a number in there. Put this back to 100. And a place to adjust the hardness. And now spacing, okay? So I mentioned that the thing puts down brush instances of the brush tip shape. That's the right computer graphic way to term it. And it puts it down about as fast as it needs to, right? If you turn the spacing down, it'll get somewhat denser, okay? But I think they did it what they felt was about right. What was that, 25 or something? But if I turn it up, I can get dotted lines. All right. So sometimes you need to adjust the spacing, particularly when you're scattering something and they're coming out too close together. You have to come back here. So I actually do use that fairly often, although it seems kind of not too important. So shape dynamics, there we have it. Let's go down to transfer, because that's the other one that you use a lot. Really, let's turn off shape dynamics so we can just see one thing at a time. That is the fading when you let up on your, okay, push down hard. And like, so if I'm doing some kind of, kind of building up tones like this, would be when I'm doing this kind of shading, maybe I'll turn down the opacity here. So I can just like, making a cloud. Let's put a little cloud here. You frequently turn off this in shape dynamics because you don't always want that little pointy thing. Sometimes you want to just build up tones that are soft. So But in transfer, and then also sometimes you want it to be more like, you're painting with I don't know, a pen or something like that, and you want it to just, that's really weird looking. I don't want it to fade. I'm doing like pen and ink work kind of a look, right? But turning that off, turning this on, okay, and let me turn my softness, my hardness back down. All right, so under transfer, there's not much here. It's really just off or pen pressure, opacity jitter, just edit fill. Okay, turned up opacity jitter, and that just makes it so it's making it darker and lighter. I'm pretty sure with the right configuration, I can make a brush that looks just like intestines. Opacity jitter, and then also here's a minimum, just like with the shape dynamics, where if I turn it up, it'll fade somewhat, but not all the way to 0 if I go very light. And flow jitter is kind of like opacity jitter, but it's going to act slightly different. All right, so turn those down, keep this on pen pressure, put shape dynamics back on. And the one thing we want to look at is scattering. Okay, and this we're just doing exercise now, but we'll do a little tutorial afterwards where we can make some brushes and stuff like that. So if I go to scattering, I'm going to stick with, this would be somewhat easier. I'm going to stick with round because I don't know what brush tip shape you guys have, okay? But I'm going to turn scatter to pen pressure. Well, I don't even have to, if I just turn up scatter, okay? Even, I'm not controlling it because that means, let me make a smaller brush. Okay, I'm not even controlling it because it's scattering evenly, whether I push the brush down hard or not, right? So that's it. So it's the instances of the brush tip shape basically move off axis, okay? And both axes, if that's how you pronounce that, it'll look a little more random, okay, if you really look at it analytically. What it means is like scatter, when it goes to push down a brush tip instance, it goes either left or right, some random amount, okay? Both axes means it places it somewhere within a circle, okay? So it's kind of more random looking, all right? And as you're building out your brush, you just kind of try these things and figure out what looks best. I can turn the control to pen pressure, and I start very light, and there's not much, and I push down hard, and it scatters more. Pretty cool. Brushes are pretty good, right? Let's see. So I'm going to turn off pen pressure just so we can isolate what's going on. Turn up my scatter a little bit, right? And count makes it so there's more instances of the brush tip shape. I mean, you could also, it seems, turn down spacing, but I think it's more like each time it's going to put in one, it puts in like 2 and I assume that this is going to go up pretty fat, If you go put a high number in there, it's probably just going to be a solid fat stroke. And count jitter, okay, this is just makes it more random, right? And you can change it to pen pressure. So the variations in the number, okay, are affected by the pen. Oh, sorry, count jitter, I got confused there myself. Count jitter is just independent. and control. No, it is that, because this is control of the scatter in general, okay? And this is control of the count jitter. It's kind of really hard to tell by looking at it. And again, it's something that I don't believe that I have ever actually used. Turn scatter down. And also, if you want to make certain things more dense, sometimes turning the spacing down or up, actually, if you want to make just a few leaves scattered across the sky in one stroke, you can turn the spacing way up, in addition to turning the scatter all the way up, and you can get some good results that way. Wet edges is like a really old school Photoshop thing that makes it so it's always slightly transparent in the middle. And I'm not sure if I can get it to show with this. Let's see, turn my hardness down. Yeah, there you can see it. It's kind of like lighter or less ink in the middle and more opaque on the edges. It's just like a quirky thing they did in 1991 or whatever, and it's been there forever. Noise, you can put some noise in there, but again, like if you want to really control the noise, you got to go into texture and stuff like that. It's not super useful. And like I said, I think color, I don't want to get dual brush is kind of complicated, and texture, and I don't think we really need them. Color dynamics is just sort of fun if I take like a couple of different colors. Foreground, background jitter, okay? So it's jittering between the foreground and background color, varying it, but it goes around the color wheel when it jitters it. And since those are pretty different colors, it hits a lot of different colors. And you can turn on pen pressure. I'm just looking at this. See, if I let up on it, it just sticks to the background color. But if I push down, it jitters more. Okay. And there's other stuff you can play with in here, but honestly, it's not really particularly important, but it's kind of cute little tool there. So let me check my notes here. So I think that covers everything we need with the pen tool. Yeah, so it's just making sure we have this thing functioning, so when we get into a painting project, which we will soon, that's all under control. If you can't get this stuff to work, if what I was just talking about, actually hopefully you didn't sit through the whole video, and email me at the beginning and figure out what the problem is. Okay, all right, I think that's good for this.